All right. 2023. Well, this is going to be a very hard year to top. And that's a very surprising thing to say. I call 2023 the last leg on the long road back to a normal real estate market in a normal economy, right? Because 2019 was the last normal real estate year. And every year since then has been bizarre, up or down. And 2023 was no exception to that rule of bizarreness. In fact, in 2023, the US economy has done what I consider to be impossible. Despite astonishingly high interest rates, plus quantitative easing by the Federal Reserve, the economy beat everyone's predictions, including my own. You see this cartoon on the left, right? It's actually a true representation of the economy. I mean, the economy is a train that is just smashing through all of our bearish warnings, all of our bearish projections, because unemployment, it remained extremely low. Inflation came down pretty smoothly. Energy prices were lower than we thought. Ukraine war, no Ukraine war. And by the end of the year, we actually see no evidence of any supply chain issues anywhere in the world. And I hope to get to say this again, but the US economy, it crushed it. It absolutely crushed it. In 2023, the US economy led the developed world. And here, as you can see in the graph, we are now also projecting that in addition to that amazing numbers in 2023, we're likely to crush it again in 2024 and lead the developed world again. That's Goldman Sachs' prediction. And they're also pointing out that even lagging sectors of the economy, like manufacturing, will recover in 2024. So shocking numbers. Never thought I'd say this at the beginning of 2024. And the inflation slowed and was pretty evident everywhere in the economy. While healthcare premiums rose by about 7 or 8%, they go up every year. Overall, healthcare costs were actually down 1%, something that I've never seen before, so may not happen again. And keep in mind that oil was down 27% in 2023 compared to 2022. And because everything that we make and everything that we eat has massive amounts of oil in it, right? Oil's the driver of the economy. Well, that meant that everything else on this page started to drop, right? Cars, especially electric cars, were down by massive numbers in 2023 compared to 2022. Now, we obsessively tracked inflation throughout the year, sometimes looking at it multiple times a day. And as you can see on the left here, there are two different measures of inflation. So the blue line, it tracks inflation, including food and energy. And this measure, it tends to be more volatile, as you can see from the graph. So it peaked it's slightly over 9%, 9.2% in June 2022, so about a year and a half ago, and it's now down to about 3.1%. The inflation readings today came in a little bit higher, but still around that 3%, 3.1% range. The other measure of inflation, which excludes food and energy, it tends to be a lot less volatile. You see there the dotted line, and it peaked at about 6.5% in 2022. And while the graph is showing it at 4%, as of now, it's actually in the threes. Now, what's more important is that recent numbers, with the exception of the report that came in today, if you look at the last 6 months, they've all been phenomenal reductions. Today's numbers were meh. They weren't. There was still a reduction in one of the numbers, and one of the numbers was flat. The market was actually thinking that they would go down, and so the Dow went down 500 points. But overall, the numbers are still in the threes. So we expect that these numbers will continue to come down because the Fed's not in any hurry to cut interest rates. And so the expectation is that for 2024, and you can see on the screen, inflation will be at 2.3%. That's still a little bit higher than, pre-COVID. You can see the pre-COVID numbers there. So you sort of average them out there a little bit under 2, but it is not a number that scares anyone. It could have been a lot worse. Inflation may not have come down as smoothly as it has. So I'm just very relieved with where we are with inflation compared to where we could have been. Now, why do we care about inflation as real estate investors? Because high inflation is tied to high interest rates. And those rates are highly influenced by 10-year treasury rates. And that's what the Fed is basically jacking up and down as it does its thing. And I'm really, really happy today as a real estate investor to see this graph because just 5 months ago, on October 17th last year, right here, the 10-year treasury hit 5%, just for a couple of days, but 5%. That is a stunningly high number that no one had projected in 2022 or 2021. But today, the number's around 4%. So it's gone up a little bit, but it's around 4%. So down 100 basis points or 1%, even though interest rates have not been cut in this time frame. So the market's basically projecting the future. That's great. But none of us pays treasury rates when we buy single family homes or we buy multifamily homes. So it is important to look at actual mortgage numbers. And once again, you can see that the 30-year mortgage, and that's this number here, the blue one here, it peaked around that October 17th date that I just told you about at 7.79. That's just a killer, 7.79. And today it's around 6.6. So it's dropped about 1.2% in 5 months. Once again, the market's correcting, and it's correcting in the favor of real estate investors, right? And bottom left, you can see this dude, Sam Cater, he's chief economist at Freddie Mac, and he says lower rates are now bringing potential home buyers who were previously waiting on the sidelines back into the market. So a bunch of people, once the rates went to the sevens, they were not interested. Now that they're down to six and they seem to be potentially moving further down, we're beginning to see more homeowners in the marketplace, which is great. Now, none of these potential home buyers are really going to jump into the market unless they feel comfortable about not just inflation, but about their wages, about their salaries, right? Wage growth is how Americans measure their net worth. And for nearly 3 years, inflation was faster than wage growth, right here, right? But here on the right side of the graph, you can now see that wage growth in the US, salaries are growing faster than inflation. And that makes Americans feel good about themselves, and they start buying homes and cars at a faster rate. In fact, most people would be shocked to know that wage growth in the US as of July 2023, about 6, 7 months ago, was over 5% a year. Something that very rarely happens in a developed economy like the US. And that wage growth is cooling now. You'll see some of that in a few slides. You'll see some data, but it's still above inflation.